In this guide, you will learn stuff about Yoru that even pro players didn't know about and learned from me. But if you're a beginner, this is the perfect spot to learn Yoru from, because I will explain to you every single thing about every single piece of utility that you need to know before practicing this character. And this character is incredibly flexible. He is incredibly versatile. He can be a lurker, he can be an entry duelist, he can be a secondary entry, he can be a flash supporter, he can be a pop flasher. Everything that you want him to do, he will do it. But what's even more important, this guide is only the first part of the entire cycle, because I'm aiming to do my own playbook for every single map that I play Yoru on, and I play Yoru on every single map. I have over 2,500 hours on Yoru, and that is only in matchmaking. Today's episode is sponsored by Elgato. Go to elgato.com for the newest hardware for streamers, use the link from the description below and the code for 5% off. Yoru is the most complicated character in the entire game, with the highest skill floor but also highest skill ceiling. If you want to master the game, Yoru is the character to do it with. He is incredibly complicated to play, but also incredibly rewarding to play. But you need to put in the work to actually be a good Yoru. If you are gonna just wing it, you're gonna look like a clown. You're gonna be clowned on by your opponents, you're gonna get killed while being flashed by yourself or TPing without a gun out. The Yoru clone, also known as Fakeout, is in my opinion Yoru's most valuable ability, one that you should always use with intent. There's so much you can achieve with it, which makes mastering the clone essential for becoming a successful Yoru player. Let's break it down. There are a few goals of using the clone that you need to be aware to fully get value out of the clone. First goal is to bait out the opponents. You can lure the enemies into peeking from their positions, exposing them to your team. But this can only be done if you naturally have a clone that runs into a site like a real player. 2 is to trade the clone like a teammate. Treat the clone as if it were a real ally, creating opportunities to punish opponents who engage with it. Now the thing is, this is why I think this is such an important piece of utility that you have access to, because in ranked you can never trust a teammate that he will properly trade you, but you can always properly trade your clone if you do it yourself. So you're able to always naturally peek into someone who is killing the clone, and you'll do that in the correct timing so it doesn't look like it's baiting essentially, right? That's not something that you will typically see in ranked, and you're able to finally showcase what is the timing between the peak, the trade. And that's why it's so important to use the clone effectively. In this example, you will see the proper timing that I use between using the clone getting hit, and me trading the clone in the moment when the opponent is turning around from the flash. This timing is also the one that is correct if you want to consider someone being traded. If it would be later on, then you would essentially bait the clone and then not really gain much from it. But not many players in ranked actually know that there's a difference. The next goal is to use it as a meat shield. What I mean by that is if opponents don't shoot the clone, you can use it to block bullets or to create temporary cover. It's one of those techniques that not many people actually use, but if your opponents at some point are going to learn some of the patterns that you use with your clone, they might actually start ignoring the clone. And you can, because of that, use it as a shield for yourself. If you put it in front of you, an opponent is not shooting, you can then move in a way that is being set up between your opponent and yourself and essentially block the bullets with the clone and use it as not only a shield but also a flash at some point, and you are forcing your opponent to shoot the clone because of it. It's a technique that is typically being used in a longer range battles because you're able to have the clone in front of yourself for a longer time. The next goal is to destroy utility. The clone is perfect for dismantling abilities from agents like Chamber, which traps it destroys, Deadlock, which censors it destroys and activates to stun, Killjoy, Alarm Bot will be activated and her turret will start shooting as well, Cypher will trigger his traps that you can then shoot and destroy, or Vice. Vice's wall is one of the biggest issue specifically in VCT, because teams don't really have an idea how to play against it, and they would try to trigger the wall with one player or like time an entire team to go through it. But with a Yoru clone, you can trigger it at the beginning of the game where you know where the Vice is, and essentially completely dismantle the setup of the Vice without risking anyone's life. To do this effectively, sometimes you will need to master some clone lineups, but I will demonstrate that later on each map. Now let's talk about some techniques to master. To fully leverage the Fakeout, here are some key techniques you'll need to learn. 1. Positioning for realism. Sending the clone at angles that mimic how a real player might peek is the key to a successful clone. Adjust the speed or path to make it harder for enemies to tell it's a fake. So you will have to use the Gundrop Technique, which is the second point. Gundrop Technique is a technique that when you drop your gun on the ground or throw it in the air and then catch it so you avoid making noise, so you will affect the way that the clone is moving, because it will move with different speed when it has a rifle, different speed when it has a pistol, and different speed when it has only a knife equipped. And that is only possible if you don't have a pistol or a rifle on your body, which means you will have them to drop them on the ground or to throw them and catch them and activate the clone during that moment. Using Gundrop Technique not only increases the speed of the clone, but also makes it more confusing for the opponents, because now they will think it's a real player, because why would a clone have a knife? But there's also another bonus, because if the clone runs faster, that means that it will cover more ground. So the distance where it starts and when it ends is bigger than when it runs with a rifle, because the timer is still the same on the clone, but the speed will make it go faster and cover more distance. It's something that requires a lot of practice, but is invaluable when it comes to learning Yoru and being effective with Yoru. It's one of my favorite techniques that I developed and tried to popularize in the Yoru community. You can also use obstacles strategically. You can make the clone stand still by positioning it near specific objects. While there are not many spots where this works, one example is Heaven on the A side, where you can just put the clone in a spot where it stands still and baits up opponents to shoot it. Next point would be creating impactful lineups. Using lineups to destroy common utility from sentinels, like for example on Fracture on Dish, where Chamber almost always puts its trap or Killjoy puts its alarm board, you can condition your opponents that you will destroy it and you will force him to reposition that trap to a different spot. You should also avoid overcommitting to imitating the clone. It's a trick that doesn't really work against higher level opponents, and your goal should be to use the clone to actually kill other people or destroy utility, not to like use it in dumb ways and then to imitate the clone, because yeah, you want people to shoot the clone and not avoid it. Other common mistakes to avoid is unrealistic movement paths. Like, make sure the clone is running at an angle and behaves in a way that mimics that of a real player. If the clone takes an illogical path, opponents will immediately recognize it's a fake. So to convince your opponent that the clone is actually a player that they need to shoot, you need to avoid two things. One, the angle is not realistic for a player to essentially do, right? If I do the clone like this, the players will already know that this is a clone, because why on earth would be a player moving like this? And two, you want to avoid doing a clone that signals it's forming, because when you do the clone, it has like an aura that is building up when it's forming. So if someone sees that too fast, they already will know that it's a clone because it has that forming animation. So you want to avoid that. This particular angle in mind, what I would like to do with my clone is to put it earlier, to be stuck on the wall, and then angle it correctly so I can trade it like this. So now it baits into being shot and also doesn't signal it's forming with it. Now I can do it either from long range like this, so it makes footsteps, so it baits people into looking into this corner and then slowly peeks out, which can be already shot, right? So I can trade it early like this, stops moving here, gets shot, I peek, or I will do it close to the wall like this, so it doesn't make any noise and it forms and runs forward and probably gets shot on the way. Remember that your clone is also a hard counter to ISO ult, Deadlock ult, but also bait people like Jet, Raze or Gecko, for example, to use the ult on the clone if you bait them properly. You can easily equip the clone the moment you hear the shield pop from ISO and still have enough time to use it in front of you. Also remember that the clone, if put on the ground, is actually visible for the opponents. Using the clone to imitate yourself is also another mistake. While it's tempting to use the clone to mirror your movement, this often backfires. Instead, focus on ensuring that opponents feel compelled to shoot it. By mastering this technique and avoiding these common pitfalls, you'll turn Fakeout into a tool that consistently creates opportunities, disrupts enemy plans, and elevates your Yoru gameplay. First and foremost, basics of the flashes. The flashes are invisible when they travel. They only start being visible for the opponents when they bounce from a target. So if I do it this, the opponents will only see it when it bounces from here. Pay attention to the opposing Yoru, how he flashes and how he will not see any traces. Second thing you need to know about the flash, it has limited range. For example, over here I can still throw it to heaven, but if I just do it a little bit too far away, it will disappear after 56 meters of range. The absolute most important aspect of the flash that you need to know when you play Yoru is how big is the distance after it actually bounces from a wall. And that distance is 7 meters. 7 meters is also enough to actually go over the smokes if you just pop them straight up from the ground, like this. This will allow the flash to pop over the smoke and pop flash everyone around it. Now this is also enough to pop flash over the boxes, for example over here. And it will still flash people who are looking over the box. Now knowing all those unique aspects of the Yoru flash will allow you to be creative with the flash itself, because it plays differently than every other flash in the game. If I'm a Sky who wants to go up from short towards the A side, well, I'm just gonna use my flash on the right side over here to not flash myself and then check lamps, right? Just flash it over here like this. But if I'm a Yoru, now I can do it differently. I can imagine that my opponent's position might be flashed even though I'm flashing behind him. So, because of the distance, I can hide the bounce of the flash behind the person that stands over here, but still he will get fully flashed because the flash explodes in front of him. This is incredibly important when playing Yoru. This will come in handy specifically also when you play your ultimate, because it will allow you to bait people into looking into your direction, but we'll talk about that later. It's incredibly important to understand that when playing Yoru, you're gonna be flashing in a different style than when playing Chaos, Sky, or Phoenix. Well, definitely Phoenix, right? But in general, look at the position of the Yoru, and now when I will be flashing, there's also a difference if I'm flashing on the lowest side of the map or the higher side. Look at how long the Yoru gets flashed. This is a full flash of 2.75 millisecond, but if I flash above him like this, he gets flashed for a very, very short duration of the time. That's because the flash is off his screen. He doesn't see the flash itself, he only gets the audio cue, so he's not even able to like dodge it properly, but the price is that the flash doesn't really flash for long. Now, you can use that sometimes as an advantage, but in general, I don't recommend flashing over this particular distance unless someone is far away to see that flash from that distance. For example, this person over here still gets fully flashed even if it's high up. So for example, if I want to clear the position of the Yoru and lamps, I can use this flash bouncing from the wall over here, and it bounces as a one-way flash while my opponent is fully flashed. I don't get affected at all because it explodes around the corner, but my opponent is fully flashed because I know which position I'd like to flash in the first place. Remember that he doesn't see the flash bounce. He only sees it when it's actually going into his POV, which is already after like 2 meters of travel, so he has less time to dodge the flash. I know we didn't speak about the TP yet, but it's important to now explain how do they work together. The flash animation timer is a little bit longer than the actual animation of the TP. So when you do them together, you need to be aware of this. You don't want to get fully flashed by your own TP, because if you TP during the moment when the bounce starts happening, you're gonna be fully flashed like this. So in most cases, you would like to start the activation of the TP after the bounce is already happening like this, so you don't get fully flashed. But now you can also combine that with turning around from the flash during the animation timer. For example, in this particular flash TP play that I have for showers, I would like to put my TP on the left side but the flash on the right side, and when I TP, not only I start when the bounce starts, but I also don't look into the direction of the flash, so I never get flashed even though I TP early during the animation of the flash. This baits people into looking into me and they get fully flashed while I'm being not flashed almost at all because the flash is exploding behind me completely. Practicing this is important. You want to know exactly where do you want to TP while the bounce starts, on when do you want to TP after the bounce already started. But the thing is, if you're gonna be too late and someone's flash is already gonna be gone or he just ducked it and now you're gonna be out in the open without a gun, can be lethal to a Yoru player. So this is an incredibly important skill to understand when you're playing Yoru. Another important aspect of understanding how to flash is how many different possibilities you actually have for yourself. Let's go back to this lamps play. And now, when I want to flash the short over here, what are my options when it comes to flashes? Because, you know, I can do kind of something like a KO pop flash by bouncing it from the ground like this. I can also do this flash over here, which is terrible by the way, because not only it's way too high, but also the duration of this flash just makes it so easy to dodge, so I don't want to do this. Even if I do it lower for its fully flash, it's very easy to dodge because the opponents will see the 7 meters of the entire bounce. Now, if I don't want to do this, if I don't want to do this, what else do I have? Well, my favorite way of flashing as a Yoru is bouncing it from the wall from in front of me, because then the bounce goes behind me and it doesn't flash me. And I can swing and shoot people while they're being blinded. And now this technique of bouncing the flash in front of yourself to flash like this brings me to another topic of discussion. Equip time after you flash. This is one of the topics that when I actually spoke to pro players, or I coached some pro players, they never thought about it. And it's incredibly crucial to actually understand how fast you equip your gun. Because look at this. If I'm flashing on this wall like this, this is how fast I'll be able to shoot after flashing. It's quite a while, but you can do something to actually equip your gun faster, and that is increase the distance between yourself and the object you're flashing from. Think about it this way: if I bounce from up close to the wall, the bounce starts immediately. But if I bounce the flash from the wall while being a little bit further away from it, the bounce doesn't start immediately and I'm already equipping my gun before the flash explodes or bounces. So in this case, I'm actually improving the equip time by just being further away from the wall. So if I want to be very agile and pick the players on short, I don't want to flash like this because it takes a while to shoot. I want to flash like this so I can shoot faster and be more agile. And when you have this knowledge about how to improve your equip time after flashing, you can even equip it in a position that in theory you shouldn't be able to. Like if I flash from the floor like this, how can I improve it? Well, you can improve it by jumping up. So if I'm in a smoke or I'm just behind a box and I want to make sure that I improve my equip time, I will jump when I start flashing like this, and now I can suddenly start shooting faster than normally. So if I'm in a smoke and I want to peek out, I'll just do this and I can already start shooting. But if I'll just not jump at all, I will be equipping the gun way later. And remember, this matters for every gun, but it's also essential when it comes to SMGs, because the 750 milliseconds of the equip time on SMGs is 250 milliseconds faster than, for example, Phantom. So when you improve it, you're actually deadly fast. You essentially can start shooting the moment the flash pops, which essentially will kill the people that want to dodge the flash. An incredibly important aspect also of the flash is using it as a fake. So what I mean by that, for example, if I planted on triple and now I play on bench, but I want to fake my position, I can use the flash from here, use it on lamps like this. Now, when it bounces and flashes in lamps, I will make enough noise with the bounce and the flash that people on short and CT will hear that, because they only hear and see the bounce and the explosion, they might actually think that I am in lamps or like in front of it or inside of it, clearing those positions in post plant, and now they will be busy clearing that position themselves, or even peek from short trying to clear lamps while I'm standing safely in bench and getting the kills in the back. This is actually tested in game and it works. In the future guides, where I will give you playbooks for each map, I will also explain why some of the Yoru flashes that you will see popularized by other content creators are trash, while flashes like this that you don't see anywhere are fire as fuck. And now let's talk about the bread and butter for Yoru, which is the Gatecrash, colloquially named just TP. Now, the TP has so many use cases, it's actually insane. So let's go one by one. So let's talk basics. First, the movement speed of the TP is faster than you running with the knife, which makes it a perfect tool for both attacking and defending because it's faster for your rotations, but also faster for attacking an angle because it breaks timings. The Gatecrash is invisible to the opponents unless they're in the range of this blue circle, which is around 5.5 meters in diameter. Now, remember, this is going to be important when you're going to start building lineups, because you're going to go for a pathway that will try to avoid having players in this range. Now, even if you don't want to use the TP as an actual TP, you can use it as a fake. Now, what is important to understand is what is the distance that it makes the sound from. So for the opponents, they will hear the fake TP from a distance of 43 meters, which is exactly this. It's pretty big distance, so you can easily fake people with it. But remember that the fake TP leaves this kind of a spray paint over here that is gonna be visible for 30 seconds. Some other important basics is, for example, the Gatecrash will be up open for 30 seconds. But remember that the timer starts already pre-barrier time, so if you put it too early, you're gonna lose value on it. The cost of the Gatecrash is 150 credits, but remember that the first one is free. So in some low buy rounds, like for example when you lost the pistol round, don't buy a second one, just use the one that you have equipped so you can use it for free in that round. But then for round 3, for example, you can rebuy the second one and now you have 2 TPs for 150, but you used a free TP on the previous round because of it. You can save a little bit of cash for your current rounds. Another basic thing that you really need to know about Yoru TP is that you can activate the Yoru TP at any moment when it's active, but you cannot move anymore once you press the activation of the TP. What does that mean? That means that you are very easy to kill if you do that because you're standing in that one spot. What you can do though is, for example, you can jump up, activate the TP, so you're harder to hit because you're changing your position during the fall. Now, you can combine those both with a double bind, and this is something that I recommend for every single Yoru player out there. For example, me, I do the Gatecrash on the mouse wheel up and the jump on the mouse wheel up as well. So now with this double bind, I have frame perfect bind for jumping with a TP activation at the same time, like this. So I'm harder to hit, so when someone tries to shoot me, when I try to be, active with the TP, then I am able to sustain more damage because it's not that easy to actually hit a headshot on me when I'm jumping up. One of the most important aspects of the TP is also understanding how it moves. Well, it moves only forward, no? Well, yes, but actually no. You can affect the way it travels around the map, and this is one of the things that actually will make your Yoru main once you understand how this works. I created 2 lineups for Heaven A over here that will illustrate what I mean. You will have those lineups on the specific map guides, but for now I'm just going to use it as an example. Pay attention to how the TP travels over here. It wraps around the wall, and in theory, if it goes forward only, it should end up here. But somehow, it's going under hell. Now this is going to be even more visible with the second lineup from here. Because, it should go forward, right? Well, yes, but actually no. It will actually go into the corner over here. Why is that? The reason why the TP can change its direction is because when it meets an object, it will use its force against it and will start turning. So, for example, over here, when I use this lineup, the TP wants to go forward, but because it's at the wall, it starts turning into this direction, so now it forces itself to go in that direction once it's met with the object. So once you understand that, you'll be able to create way more creative lineups than normal. Now, to imagine this as a player, essentially, if I'm mimicking the TP movement, it would look something like this. I go forward, I meet the wall, and now I slowly start rotating towards the left side of the wall, and I suddenly stop and I go into this direction over here. I know my explanation might be a little bit confusing, so I would propose for you to go to a custom map and try it yourself to try to understand it a little bit more from your own perspective as well. You know what? I actually changed my mind. This topic will be the most important one when it comes to knowing how to TP. This is gonna be, where do I look at after TPing? So imagine it being this. You are TPing to a spot and you need to imagine what direction will I like to look at after I TP. Because if I do, for example, this lineup over here goes at the end of the wall and I just TP, then I look straight up into the wall. Right? But you can affect the way that you TP into a direction before you even start TPing, because you TP exactly with the same position you look at currently before you activate the TP. I know it sounds complicated. It's very simple. Look, if I want to TP into that corner, right, and I want to end up looking into this direction over here while TPing over here, then I need to just set up my position as a player in that direction already. So like this. See? I TP'd looking directly into the corner that I already wanted to. Now, when you do that, you're gonna start imagining your process already. I want to TP into this corner, for example, over here, but I want to look directly into default over here. So instead of TPing while looking here, I'm gonna TP while looking here. See? Now this is incredibly important because it will be actually part of your flash TP executes to not flash yourself, or be ready to find the objects that are already flashed to save some time while TPing, so you're not confused where to look at after the TP. So you don't look like that SpongeBob meme that I'm not gonna put in the edit because I'm old. As a beginner Yoru, you kinda need to understand that the TP is a very flexible tool. It can be used for the rotations, for the attacking with a flash TP combo, which is more complicated and you should not do it at the beginning of your career, but also it can be just used as a, let's say, quote-unquote bad jet dash, because I can play with an operator or any other gun, play in an off angle that makes no sense, right? Play over here, for example, should instantly TP into safety. There's a very small chance that you're gonna get killed because of your double bind, so even if you get shot at, it's probably gonna just be a body shot for 40 or something, and you get into safety. And now, because you have two TPs, you can again use your TP, reposition, play in another stupid off angle, try to get one and TP out again. Being a versatile player is very important in Valorant because now you can play all of the different roles. You will be able to play Yoru as an entry duelist, you will be able to play Yoru as a lurker, you're gonna be able to play Yoru as a rifler, but also as a sniper, all in one package. And you'll be also able to abuse judges and stingers because of how versatile the entire kit is. It's one of the characters that can utilize almost every single piece of this arsenal to its full extent. Well, I don't really like Ares and Odin, but yeah, that's about it. My very honest advice when it comes to using Yoru is, please, as a beginner, try to not use your TP as a combo with the flash too much. It's incredibly complicated, it's hard to nail down the timings without knowing your character well, so it would be better for you and for your stats if you would just use the TP first for rotations and for like a safety dash after shooting some bullets, but avoid using it as an attacking tool first. You need to learn the agent fully before you want to actually do the proper flash TP executes. Now, on the topic of the ultimate, I'll be very honest with you, the ultimate is such a complicated piece of util. We're gonna make an entire video about just how to utilize the ultimate itself. But in this video, I'll just tell you some basics. Few facts about the ultimate. First, when you activate it and you run around in it, your opponents will hear your footsteps, which means that sometimes it makes sense to actually shift in your ultimate, because they will not hear where you're coming from, but they will see the aura. Now the aura works this way. Let's say an opponent is standing in this corner and is actually looking into the wall, and I'm looking into this direction while I have my ultimate. My opponent will still see the blue aura of the Yoru ultimate, because there can be a line of sight drawn between player A and player B. If there will be cover between us, like for example over here, then the player here in the corner will not see the blue aura anymore. So what will happen in the game is sometimes with long range ultimates, for example, like going into the spawn over here, you will have an opponent visible here on CT that will have the blue aura, but he will never hear your footsteps because you're gonna be too far away for the footsteps to actually matter. But when you exit the ultimate, the range, the audio range of you exiting the ult has an incredibly big range of 80 meters. Essentially, that's enough to be heard in a garden over here, as you can see. So, when you exit the ult, almost everyone on the map will hear you exiting the ult in a specific direction. What's very interesting about the Yoru ult is that it sometimes hard counters characters. For example, the Yoru ult can go freely through the wall of deadlock, but not only that, it also activates the traps because you make the footstep sounds. Dimensional Drift is such a diverse toolkit. It can be essentially anything ranging from a recon, because it's essentially like a drone. It can be used as distraction because you can still use all the utility pieces in it, so all the flashes, clones to destroy utility, and set up a TP for rotation or attack, right? And then also it can be used as a kill tool. You can literally just use it as something to get an advantage in a gunfight. My favorite thing to recommend for beginner Yorus is to use the Stinger in the ultimate, not the Shorty. I think the Shorty is just completely not reliable and also very limited in the way that you can use it, because you can only use it up close, but the Stinger has the same equip time and can be used for different ranges. So what you will try to do is you're gonna ult, you're gonna try to find a person in front of you somewhere isolated from other players and exit the ultimate without using any utility the moment you see the player has a utility in hand or has a knife in hand. Ideally the knife, because equipping back to a weapon from a knife takes full equip time. So if you exit the ultimate when your opponent has a knife in hand, you will have your gun faster than the opponent typically, and you will be able to kill them without using any single piece of util. Just shoot them in the back. My other piece of advice when it comes to ulting is baiting people into looking into your flash. For example, the deadlock here is on the backside. Now the goal is to make her look into my flash and as I exit the ult and get an easy kill. How do I achieve that? How do I bait her into looking in that direction? I'm ulting, I spot the deadlock, I make the plan, I flash over here, I un-ult, make her look into this direction, she gets fully flashed because she looks into me un-ulting over here. This makes her look into this direction and the flash bounces in front of her, which results in her being fully flashed and I get an easy kill. It's not an easy thing to do when you have only 12 seconds of the ult duration, so you have to be precise. You need to know how many angles do you have to cover, how many angles you can be killed from when exiting, and when does your flash pop. It all comes from experience and repetition, and that's what I like to advise when it comes to the Yoru ultimate. You need to practice, and also start with the small steps. First, learning how the flash works, first learning how the ultimate speed goes in, how fast you exit your ultimate with a gun out. All of that requires you to repeat all the same stuff over and over again. Because context matters when you ult, and also the ult is being affected by your own personal playstyle. I will make another video only about the ultimate in the future, because I don't want this video to be 60 minutes long or more even. I don't even know how long it will be, but this will be too much. So this will be a separate video, but you're gonna still get another guide this is just the first part of my Yoru Guide cycles, so you can expect more videos about each specific map, about how a playstyle affects how you play Yoru, and the Yoru Ultimate video as well.